coming out of my very first class, I was like hands on heart, hands on my body, just like, holy shit, what is this feeling? Previously, I've called out yoga as a thing for girls and a thing for gays.
You've submitted the 130 kilo dude who's built like a brick shit house, and you've got him on the floor in the fetal position 5 minutes into what he thought was going to be a soft practice.
I told him I wanted to be able to do a handstand by the time I got to the end of the teacher training, and he turns to me, "Just mate, that's cool, but if you're still an arsehole, Karl, who gives a fuck?" It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Men are amazing, but there's this feature about us that we go until we break.
Men moving in the same direction together is a powerful force.
Welcome, humans, to the Primal Man Project podcast. My name's Jason. I'm the founder of the Primal Man Project. If you're not aware of what we do, I'm a transformational coach, and I founded a movement that is about helping men to live life in alignment with their evolutionary design so that they can create more impact in their lives and more abundance of money, time, freedom, so that we can basically have better lives as men in the modern world. And today, I've got another one of my fucking epic closest bros with me, a legend by the name of Karl Palin. And rather than tell you who he is, I'm going to get him to tell you a little bit about himself. Bro, if you're at a dinner party and somebody says, "What do you do?" What do you say?
I help people transform their lives through the practice of yoga. Specifically, I build strong bodies and clear minds with the practice of yoga. I deliver that through my yoga studio in Camden, New South Wales, called One Big Heart. And it's definitely a purpose-driven business for me, bro. Yeah.
That is a smooth intro, bro. If I was sitting at a dinner table and I asked you that question and you delivered that, I'd be like, fuck, I need to be around this guy. You sound impressive, man. That's fucking dope.
Thanks, bro.
What's your story of how you got into yoga? I remember we've kind of touched on it in patches, but yeah, I don't know if I've actually heard it beginning to end. How did you end up being the yoga dude?
For sure. Interestingly, I pushed back on yoga for quite a period of time. Misunderstood it, made up ideas in my mind about what it was. Essentially, I was using fitness in the gym, competitive fitness, to manage my mental health. Really thrived in that environment. Obstacle course racing was my jam. I ran that circuit for years. I got really hooked on that.
Which one was your favorite?
Tough. The big Tough Mudders and the big Spartan races are really where it's at for me. You know, the 20K stuff.
Was it the electrodes that they hang on the walls in Tough Mudder that give you the fucking zapty zap on the way through, or was it like diving over big pools of water and having to swing on monkey bars and remind yourself of being 8 years old again?
Well, actually, the electrodes reminded me of being 8 years old again. I grew up in a pretty rural part of New South Wales. Electric fences, man. We challenge ourselves to touch electric fences all the time. So I saw that. I'm like, yes, here we go. But there is a lot of exciting stuff in there, jumping off big ledges into water and, there's some really challenging parts. I remember specifically in the Tough Mudder at about the 17K mark, there's these big mud hills, and the mud sucked me in and I got stuck. And like in that moment, like emotion just overcame me. I started bawling my eyes out. Not hysterically crying, but like just weeping. And like it was a big breakthrough for me on the other side. People had to help me get up through there, and then the power came on and finished it at the end. But that was my jam. That was my goal. I realized that the goal in the gym of getting big wasn't doing it for me. And I'd been doing some running at the time, and I heard about these things. I'm like, yep, I set myself that challenge of a 20K Tough Mudder, even though I'd only ever ran 3Ks before. Gave myself a 9 months head start. Got a little bit down the track and went, oh shit, that could be a bit big. So I jumped on a 6K one called the Tough Bloke Challenge down here at Cataract Scout Park, which was epic. That was my first experience into it. But all of this training really put my body into a position where it was broken because I didn't understand the rebound side, the nurture component of restorative practices that could help me keep going. So there was, a lot of chiros and physios and all these kinds of people involved weekly to keep my body in tip-top shape so I could keep doing what I was doing so I could, combat what these demons were up here. And then they offered a well-being program at work, which just happened to be yoga once a week for 10 weeks. I was working in the government sector, project manager there in the IT division. And I was like, okay, well, previously I've called out yoga as a thing for girls and a thing for gays. But if someone, just stupid mindset, uneducated mindset. And I thought, okay, if someone wants to give it to me for free in my lunch breaks when I'm going through this, I was like started to suffer a complete burnout. The adrenaline overload that I fueled myself on from the competitive fitness and the stresses of that project management environment just came crashing down on me. And my depression came back real bad. I really didn't want to get out of bed and go to work every day anymore. So I was like, okay, fuck it. Well, I hate my job anyway now. And so if they want to give it to me for free at lunchtime, let's give it a crack. That's where it started. Corporate yoga programs, man. They're a thing. They're a jam.
What was the moment that you realized, hey, there's something in here?
Oh, dude, coming out of my very first class, I was like hands on heart, hands on my body, just like, holy shit, what is this feeling? This feeling of peace and ease and just calm in my head. I was like, wow, I don't know when I've ever experienced a feeling like this before, My 20s were hectic, fueled with, all of this training during the week that I then used as an excuse to go and just obliterate myself on the weekends at pubs and clubs and festivals and whatever. And so I was very much used to rolling into a Monday, rolling into a Tuesday with just, levels of anxiety through the roof and a fair whack of depression around that as well. And so it was that feeling of peace and calm that kept me going. I was like, I need more of that. That's the thing I'm looking for. Yes, I want to fix my body. And yes, it did that. I'm 43 now. We're talking 15 years ago. I still train 5 days a week in the gym. I do big stuff. I lift like I used to when I was 28, 30. But I don't. I do it in different ways now, because yoga's taught me how to manage my mind. Yoga's taught me the benefits of slowing things down, things like breath work. Like in between all of my sets in the gym, I'm in a breathwork and meditation experience in between all my sets, especially on the bigger ones. The bigger ones, even more. Yeah, so that's where it all started, dude.
Mm-hmm. What is it that people most misunderstand about yoga? What are people getting wrong about it?
For sure. So things that people come to me with is that yoga's a bit woo-woo. The other one is that yoga is really soft and gentle, which, it's absolutely not. I have a giggle, often at the front desk in the studio where, a woman might bring her man down who can immediately look at this dude and just go, yeah, he's a footy player, right? And I'll say to him, brother, this is going to be challenging for you. Rest when you need to. And he'll look at me and laugh. And 5 minutes into class, I've got him on one knee and he's looking up at me going, what the fuck? I'm like, dude, I wouldn't lie to you. Welcome, brother. Welcome to the pain.
You've submitted the 130 kilo dude who's built like a brick shit house, and you've got him on the floor in the fetal position 5 minutes into what he thought was going to be a soft practice.
Yeah. See,
love it. We used to have guys that would come into the CrossFit gym, and my coach was an absolute legend, and he really wanted to have people operating on a level playing field mentally, emotionally. He didn't do superiority, one person's above another, and would get these big gym bros that would come in, couldn't put their arms down because their lats and their delts they couldn't even turn their head. They had to move their whole body, and
they're bringing their suitcases into the gym with them.
Yeah. And they roll in, and the first thing my coach John would do is he would get them to do an overhead squat with a broomstick.
Yeah.
Olympic style overhead squat.
Yeah.
And these dudes couldn't get a broomstick above their head, and they couldn't get down into a full depth squat with this thing over their head. And it was this great, humbling, leveling opener for them to just go, hey man, you come in here as a white belt. You got to understand you're starting in a new thing, and what a great experience. What a humbling experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done a few of your yoga classes, man, and I'm in pretty good nick for 40, and I definitely humble myself in the presence of the practice of yoga. It's a thing that I haven't immersed myself in yet, but can recognize. Man, I had all the stories about yoga. My ex-wife was actually a bit of a pro. My son's mum, funny, ironically, considering the level of dysfunction that's in her life now, she was, she was really into it. And I remember saying the things like, what's so good about fucking going to a room and stretching for an hour? I can stretch at home. What do I need the stretching for? But obviously there's a huge amount of depth in the teachings. There's a huge amount of significance in the spirituality, the thousands of years of wisdom, tradition, the connection with the body, how it connects to the mind, how it connects to the spirit, and then allows access to places and states of being using the breath and the body that really aren't available endogenously, without the aid of substances in a lot of other ways.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. There's definitely multiple facets to it. There's the physical side, and then for me, I suppose for me that, like I said, that thing that kept me driving further in was recognition of the headspace that I arrived in, and then curiosity. Like curiosity is where it's at. If someone turns up to yoga and they're purely focused on the physical, and even if they have that experience of something shift, but they struggle to seek that further, if the curiosity piece is missing around, well, what is that? What is that part of me that allows me to, in the space of 60 minutes, go from complete freak out, stress, anxiety into like an absolute different version of myself? What if people don't get curious around that, then the journey doesn't unravel. My teach Dunks in the early stages, or he's my teacher through teacher training. I told him I wanted to be able to do a handstand by the time I got to the end of the teacher training, and he turns to me, "Yes, mate, that's cool, but if you're still an arsehole, Karl, who gives a fuck?" It's like, whoa, yeah. Yeah, the ability to do a handstand doesn't make you a yogi, you know, like gymnasts can do handstands. There's lots of, yeah, you know, it's the curiosity around what is that soul connection inside of me that has a drive to want to seek more understanding. And people need to have gone through significant levels of pain that they want to get the fuck away from. Man.
Isn't it a weird thing about human nature, especially men? And it's not to deride us. I think we're an incredible, we're an incredible species, and men are amazing. But there's this feature about us that we go until we break. We bear the load until we can't bear it anymore, and generally we'll bear it a little bit longer. And there needs to be this catharsis, crisis, breaking point. And obviously you found that, all right? You got to a place where you were almost, or pretty much at burnout. You discovered yoga was a solution to the problem that you didn't know was available, which seems to be such a theme that, when I get to the bottom or the root cause stories, the crunch moment in so many men, there was a discovery of a thing they didn't know was available to solve a problem they didn't realize they had. Because when we're in the thing, when you're in the burnout, often, I'm in burnout, I don't know I'm in burnout. It's only looking back
for the truth.
Yep. It's only connecting the dots looking back, right?
Yeah.
So somebody brings awareness to the fact that there's this completely different way of being that you can get access to through this practice that you thought was for gays and girls, and that you realize it was for also the guys. You do your 10-week course. What happens then?
I was like, I started noticing changes. Even just off one class a week, I started noticing changes in the way that my headspace was and my emotional space was as I moved around in the world, in the workplace. And so the next thing that they offered was 10 weeks of Pilates. Wasn't for me. I realized that yoga was giving me something different. Yoga was giving me, even though yoga is challenging and it's strong, yoga was giving me the rebound. Whereas I felt Pilates, no disrespect to Pilates, it's fucking awesome. But I just felt like that was more of what I was already doing, like more punishment, So I realized, and I was thinking about this earlier today, I realized that a lot of my early journey, I drove my fitness from a place of aggression.
Yep.
And from a place of lack of self-respect, you're a pussy, push harder. You look at that guy over there, just be better, just be like him, just go more. He must have done more, So the Pilates wasn't for me. So I did find that there was some yoga at the gym that I was training, and I jumped in there, and that was cool. Then they brought the yoga back again. And after that second round of 10 weeks of yoga, I was like, nah, this is just the magic. And I became a member at the studio that teacher owned. Life just changed in front of my eyes, like drastically. I put myself through the discipline of getting up at 4:30 in the morning so I could leave the house at 5, so I could get to her studio at 4:45, so I could do a 6 a.m. class. And her studio was only 10 minutes down the work. Even though it was 45 minutes drive from home, it was only 10 minutes away from work. So, man, here I am not wanting to get out of bed and go to work every day to I'm turning up at work at 8 o'clock, ready, let's go. Where can I be of my best service today? And that 2 years down the road from there was the real big shift that that sent me into teacher training. And again, it came from a space of curiosity. It didn't come from a place of I want to do this as a career. Thanks to yoga, I'd fallen in love with my job again. My job was great. But driving in the car, doing a lot of contemplation as we do, I noticed something that was, I don't know why this particular day I noticed it. I noticed that I was no longer caught in all of the problems of the day and how I could have, or what I should have done in that space to correct. And I also noticed that I wasn't forecasting the problems that I was going to walk into later that night, later that week, and prepping myself for the combat of those problems. I was like, fuck, dude, you haven't had thoughts like this in like maybe 6 months. Whereas those kinds of thoughts consumed, I realized that those kind of thoughts had consumed the majority of my headspace when I was by myself. That's the space that I lived, ruminating over the past and all of the problems, or forecasting the problems of the future.
So flagellating yourself for the past,
yeah,
or getting a sword ready to swing at who was going to come at you.
Yeah, just being that fucking warrior, you know, used to life sticking it to me so fucking hard all the time. That became my general headspace. And so then I was like, I need to know more. I'm going to go do training. It was purely curiosity. Why has 15 years of fitness never done what this practice is doing for me? Yeah.
And how did you transition from working in corporate to teaching yoga?
In the first 4 days of my 3 months of training, I was driving home from Bondi, and I had this realization that I had now been gifted some of the tools to help somebody come out of a pretty mundane, ordinary existence like I was used to living. And in that moment, I decided that I had a duty to the rest of the world to somehow give this back, to help save people like I had saved myself, essentially. And I didn't know what it was going to look like. You know, I also was still very much in the practical, logical, analytical headspace of, well, I'm an IT project manager on $120K a year with a mortgage and a salary packaged vehicle and this and that. And like, I'm not going to substitute my life with a yoga teacher's wage. But the universe had other plans, bro. I was made redundant 3 months after I got certified. Oh, they went, here's a bucket full of money. Can you please fuck off? And I went, yes, I will. The path was lit for me, man. I was like, what an opportunity, you know? Wow. I never looked back. I lived in a space of belief that I am going to do this and this is going to work. I looked at other models that I knew were out there that existed. Number one being the studio that I practiced at Wetherill Park, and number two being the studio that I did my training with in Bondi. And I just modeled my stuff off that and put all the, like, there was lots of naysayers out there, man. You know, people who I trained with in the gym were like, oh, fuck, Karl's going to open a yoga studio. This will be interesting. Because they always just still saw me as the dude who was, you know, trying to get big and force everything and put shit on other people.
Their reference points for you were who you were in the past. Yeah. And they weren't inside of who you had become. Man,
absolutely, bro. Yeah.
I relate to that a lot.
Absolutely.
I remember I met a guy I hadn't seen for probably 4 years after having gone through the initiation, men's work, the work on myself. And I invited him to my birthday party, and I introduced him to a client of mine. And my client is a big dude, weightlifter, good-looking rooster, jacked human, built like a brick shithouse. And I introduced my old friend Neil to my client, and he said, he should be coaching you, because his only frame of reference was, if he's big, he must be successful. Yeah. And I turned to him and said, that's because you don't know me anymore. And you don't know the person I've become. And they say this, there's an expression that Jesus couldn't become a prophet in Bethlehem, which is essentially saying the people who knew you from your old version or your old life are very rarely the ones that will see the person you're becoming. And so it's almost impossible. You've almost got to give it up.
Yeah.
And give up
Agreed.
believing that people will reorientate who they think you are. So yeah, man, I relate to that. They had the naysayers. You looked at the studio models. How did you kick it off?
Oh, I mean, I spent some time. I had a side hustle, buying and selling mostly Harleys from auction. When I salary packaged that vehicle, ended up with some coin in the bank, and so I, substituted some income over 12 months. I taught in about 7 different places. A couple of those I'd started myself, like in community centers. I did that for about 12 months and built a bit of a following, did some more training. One of the things that was holding me back was that I was going to open under a franchise model from the guys who I did my training with. I was a bit like, they've got something that works. So, but then there was also that part of, okay, well then someone's still my boss. I'm not someone that takes wealth of being a boss, right?
Can relate.
By the same token, what I realized in the early years of business is that I also really struggled to be my own boss. Yeah.
That's the thing about freedom, right? Cuts both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did some training in Sri Lanka in that year. Actually, it was 12 months after my first training. I was in Sri Lanka again with the organization I did my training with, and we would get up and meditate every day at 5 and then go into practice with a little journal space in between. Day 3, day 4, I had all the downloads. I had all the downloads to say, you're not doing it under them, even though I'm here with them and I love them. They're great. They're not doing it under them. You're doing your own thing. My journaling that morning was me drawing the studio logo. Yeah. In pencil in my journal book. And it was set. And then this magic happened, bro. Like, because the requirements changed, because now I could make it all up myself. I'd been struggling to find space in my area that would have suited what they had as their minimum requirements. I got home from Sri Lanka. I opened realestate.com. I punched in some different requirements. I found a space that week. I signed the contracts a month after that. So now we're talking November 2016. Studio was open February 18, 2017. Pulled in all the bros because it was just a concrete box. Pulled in all the bros, smashed out a studio, and bang, we were good to go. And thankful for that following that I built in that 12-month period. I opened the doors with 30 members signed on before the doors were even open as a pre-sale sort of situation. And yeah, things went well. And then things went bad. And then things went good. And then things went bad. And now things are fucking amazing. And I'd never change it for anything.
What Elon Musk says being an entrepreneur is like chewing on glass and staring into the abyss.
That's hardcore. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I see what he's saying.
It feels good to know that a man at entrepreneurial levels like that understands some elements of the nihilistic void that the journey of entrepreneurism. I mean, one of my favorite memes that my ex-girlfriend years and years ago sent me, and she was a business owner. She was a social media manager when that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, right.
Is there's a border collie and he's walking across the pedestrian crossing and he's got his lead in his own mouth and he's walking. It's like, this is what it is to be a business owner. You've got to take yourself for a walk. Yeah. Agreed. Oh. Got to get your own water bowl. Got to feel your own dog kibble.
Yeah.
Well, that was the lone wolf model, right? And that's kind of the subtle psychology of that, is that nobody's there to help you.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really cool segue to when we found you.
Absolutely.
Responding to a Facebook ad.
Yeah.
You got on a sales call. Yeah. Talk us through sort of where you were at that point. And then
I felt like I'd come to that place of burnout again. Things weren't going well. I experienced some really high times coming out of COVID, and then I experienced this slow, steady decline that I watched and watched and watched. And, I set some targets. Okay, if the membership numbers get down to here, I'll do something about it. And then I slipped through there, and I said to myself again, okay, well, actually, it's all right. If the membership numbers get to here, then I'll do something about it. And the pain started building, and I started losing money, dude. I started having to prop the studio up off some other investments that I had, and I just started questioning my whole life. I've been doing this now for 6 years. I just won National Studio of the Year from OzActive, and I'm playing out this reel in my head, this sob story of how National Studio of the Year closes its doors 3 months after it's won. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I need to go and I need to get out of the mud for a little bit and just go and find myself. I needed a refresh. I needed a reboot, and I was looking for a yoga retreat, and I found you instead. Thankfully, bro. Gratitude for you. Fuck. What an eye-opening conversation that you had with me that first time, bro. Yeah. The lone wolf. Here he is. What?
Yeah. Well, bro, member of the pack that we wouldn't be here without. Now to bring everybody else up to speed. So that was 2 years ago.
Yep.
Come on to that Zoom call from a cold Facebook ad. Within, a few minutes, I could see the pattern of where you were relative to, I suppose, the archetype, the kind of man that is stuck in his warrior, despite the fact that you had all of the tools and all of the awareness of recovery and restoration and all of the tools that you knew would support you in balancing your energy. There was something missing for you that wasn't available within yourself. And this is the curse of modern capitalistic individualistic society. Is it removes men from the belief that they need other men or that they need community.
Yes.
It provides this underlayer of, if you're not doing it on your own, you're a bitch. If you can't hero run that race as a solo ranger, you're a pussy.
Yeah.
And the warrior in you wanted to fucking push past all of that. And it's so interesting. We haven't provided you business strategy. We haven't given you marketing tactics. We haven't told you, hey, Karl, this is what you need to do in your business. The thing that we've done with you is to provide you a community, give you a framework for how to understand yourself and what was maybe missing within yourself and your life.
Yeah.
Giving you that sense of connection, that sense of enrichment for contributing to other men's lives. And inside of 12 months, you doubled your business?
Doubled 150% up we are right now. 111 members are on board when I found you. Our break even was 150 members, which is why I was sinking. And the report last night said 269. Yeah, bro.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. To touch on this lone wolf aspect that we're getting at here, like I've always thought this, I see that this comes back to our schooling system. When we look at school, we're conditioned as children to be in competition with everybody else because we go through this system where everybody has exams and then they're ranked against other people. Whilst all that's happening, you have a single person who's standing out of the front delivering a message. There's very, very seldom is there group work in classrooms in high school that's happening. So it becomes this conditioning of the solo run, and you're in competition. You are gonna get ranked against all these other people, and you better be up the top of those ranks. Otherwise, your life is going to look like shit. That's the message that comes to our children from schooling here in Australia. And so we're set up for failure, without the right mentoring, coaching, and support through that environment. I mean, that's how it landed on me.
I think you're totally right. I think you make a really good point. And I think the entire structure of civilization in the Western world is based on a premise that we are all going to benefit if we individually pursue our own gain. That's what the capitalist model teaches.
Absolutely.
John Maynard Keynes and the competitive advantage of the individual pursuit of benefit. That when you get really good at yoga and I get really good at facilitation and I become an expert and you become an expert and I make most money, I then am able to contribute and I can go and pay for yoga and you can come and play in the men's workspace.
Yeah.
So amplified out to the entirety of Western civilization where we are fundamentally individualist. I think what that does is it orientates men to be in the shadow expression of their masculine strength, that men are built to carry burden. I'm pretty clear on that. We are phenomenally good when we are under the compression and the challenge of doing something worthy and hard.
Yes.
And on the other side, we have this, everybody in it for themselves. So we carry burden until we break. And we go it alone.
Yep.
And then we do that en masse. And we wonder why suicide is the largest cause of death in men between 18 and 45.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's two things in that. Firstly, the reason that challenge works, particularly for men, is because challenge drives focus. The right level of challenge drives focus. Too much brings overwhelm, but the right level. And so if we can stagger our absorption of challenge, we can become really effective. But and the second thing in there that you said is, for the majority of the world, this is the way. There's evidence out there that there's better models. I mean, when we go and look at, say, the blue zones across the world, with very high levels, or the highest levels of sentinels living in their communities, they don't subscribe to capitalism. These communities are more ancestral. Elders are to always be respected and looked up to, as opposed to our model where they get old, we put them in a home, we start to separate them from us, and they then lose their engagement and ability to connect because they've been essentially rejected. Like the average day for these blue zones sort of environments within the world is a big portion of time of everybody spent in the field, harvesting, preparing of food. It's not a 9 to 5 work day. It's we go out in the morning, we do this when it's cooler, we come in, we have some chill time, we enjoy each other's company. We could tend to the horses or the animals. There are some places out there, bro, that are still showing the way.
Yeah. I remember watching that documentary, and it's on Netflix. If you're interested to watch it, it's on the Blue Zones. I will say there has since been some criticism of, or some unwinding of that theory on the fact that the data that supports the birth date and the legitimate birth certificates for a lot of these centenarians has since been called into question.
Yeah,
that's
fair enough.
There is some, but the principles that they apply, the overall truth of what we're talking about here is ancestral living.
Yeah, for sure.
Being in community, being in connection, being in contribution, being in physical activity, going with the natural state of your circadian rhythm, as opposed to go and work and sit in an office and sit at a desk, eating a wide variety of whole foods, having a faith was also something that was common to all of the 5 blue zones, and also never retiring. You look at the data on death rates for people after they retire, the actuarians will tell you that it drops off like a fucking cliff. For sure. As soon as you get that golden watch, and the super or whatever it is you're retiring on, within 10 years you're like 80% more likely to kick the bucket. Whereas people like that they were featuring in the doco in Okinawa and Costa Rica and Southern California and Sardinia and Italy, they don't retire. They keep working, and they keep working in contribution.
When you look out into a field and you see someone who is very definitely over the age of 80 and they're carrying a hay bale on their fucking shoulder with a smile on their face, who gives a fuck what date's written on their fucking birth certificate, man? You know what I mean? Like, these naysayers again can go and try and blow all this up for whatever, but that's the fucking truth.
Yeah, 100%. There's a guy in the doco who is very likely to be 100 years old, and he's on a horse, and he looks about 60. He's fucking jacked and tanned and vibrant and vital, and he's running around as a cowboy in Costa Rica just doing his thing. And the dude is a beast. And I'm like, man, if I look anywhere near that good at 60, I'm going to be happy. And this guy was 100 years old by best accounts. And even if they're a couple of years off, it's like, cool, make that look good at 80. The guy. Yeah. I remember there was I don't know where I saw this, but this was either a doco or just a story relayed to me about the cowboys in Argentina. There's this, I think it's the Cauchos. There's tribes of people who live in the remote parts of Argentina that they're all just cattle people. And in that culture, they don't have a practice of tracking when you're born. It just doesn't exist. Birthday is not a thing. How old are you is not a thing. And so when the question was being asked of these folk, it's like, how old are you? And they're like, we don't care.
Yeah.
It's not important. We don't track it like that. And they asked the question back to the asker and said, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? And I love that question.
Mm.
If I asked you that question, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you were?
Yeah,
What do you say?
brother. I mean, I'd be 25 if I didn't know how old I was. That's how I feel in my body. You know, the trap is that humans decided to create time and tracking, and I understand the reasons that that's happened, but you know, every year when that number ticks over, depending on how you're wired, you and most people out there are wired towards the negative. That's one less year that you've got to be on this earth. So the weight of that is just slowly pressing on us.
Yeah.
Over time.
Did you hear the story of the experiment they ran with folks that were in their 80s and 90s where they put them in a time warp? They put them in an environment that replicated their younger years. Have you heard of this? So they did this study in a nursing home, and they took a bunch of octogenarians, so I think they were probably 80 plus, and they redecorated their environment in the nursing home with newspapers, music, memorabilia, furniture, and they recreated it as though it was from their younger years. Now, I don't know what the time period was that they recreated it for, but basically simulated as though it was a different time.
Yep.
And they took them dancing, and they played the music from that time, and they just basically lived as though they were, let's call it 20 years younger. Their blood markers, their heart rate function, their blood pressure, their overall well-being markers on every discernible measure improved. And it was improved by a significant margin, something to the effect of like 10 to 15, maybe some even 20 years younger equivalent relative scores. Like they gained 20 years of longevity and wellness just by telling themselves they were younger.
Yeah. And it all comes down to, you know, this yoga fundamentally revolves around this aspect. The power of the mind overrules everything.
Yeah.
You know, and then modern society goes and breaks this with the word of placebo. Because that's just a placebo. They put those people in a placebo environment. Well, fucking, what is placebo? Placebo is the ability of your mind to have physiological change over your body, right? And so there's there's mass amounts of truth to be said in how we choose to live. We can choose different ways, and we can have then different outcomes.
I am a massive believer in the mind over the body, and I do this in practice. Like there's a party trick I do. So if I get the hiccups, I can mentally override and tell myself that I don't have the hiccups, and I can stop them instantly. It's just a thing that I've trained myself to do, right? And it's just a mind over matter thing. Very trivial, but for me, this shows up everywhere. Shows up in the gym for me when I decide that I'm going to lift a PB. When I approach the bar, and Darren told me this, right? So our bro, Darren Herford, he used to train me, and he said, before you even step to the bar, make a decision that what is going to happen is going to happen. Yeah. And if I look at the other areas in my life where this applies, business, partnership, health, physical challenges, and then probably the thing that's of greatest development for me, that's the place that I've really done the most work, is in the landscape of my mind. What are the stories I'm telling myself, and how does that create my reality? Yeah. And I'm interested of what yoga has done for you in creating that.
Yeah, for sure. Yoga gives me the ability to reset my nervous system so I can come into spaces of clarity and start to choose how I think. Because sometimes the spiral can become overbearing and overwhelming, right? But yoga has a series of tools. And as an example, breath work is something that I practice daily. I mentioned to you before how in between all of my sets, especially my big sets, when I'm in the gym, I'm doing breath work. I'm clearing my mind. I noticed it. I'm a pretty keen golfer. Well, one of the first areas that I noticed yoga impact me was on the golf course.
Yeah, wow.
Because, hey, a shit shot on the third hole can ruin your fucking day in golf. But if you have the ability to reset your mind and forget about the past mistake or whatever you want to label it, then it's all rainbows and sausages on the other side if you choose it to be that.
There's a reason why I dislike golf, is because the only time I've ever attempted it genuinely, I was a very fucking different, angry man. I was pre-doing the work on myself, had no control over my inner landscape of my mind, and I fucking hated it. And I would get so triggered if, I did, this was in PNG. We used to have all these little all the little kids were caddies. So the little local PNG kids would run around and they'd be waiting there for the golfers to come out from the clubhouse and they, would volunteer as caddy. And we had a driving range area, which in PNG, what sufficed as a driving range was a fucking hill above a village of houses. And we would just fucking lob the golf balls down into that.
Yeah.
This was all understood. It's not abusive or terrible or whatever,
Yep.
Oppressive. It was like they lived there knowing what was going to happen, and the houses were built in a way as to hit, like the golf balls would hit the house, and they would collect the balls and sell them back to the people at the top. Anyway,
Yep.
And the little monkeys, as we would call them, would sort of watch me, and I remember yelling at these kids of like, "Fuck off and go away," because I was convinced being watched as I fucked up every shot after shot was their fault. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of result I'd get now going back into a golf game. I suspect it'd be a very different experience.
For sure. And like sports is a really good telltale of the mind. Yeah, if you look into tennis and you look at someone like Nick Kyrgios.
Yep.
I mean, that he is a gun, but something simple like a Christmas beetle flying across his vision when he's about to serve and he's just lost a whole tournament. He can't bring himself back from that place. Yeah.
He's got a lot of fire, which is, part of his success as well, because he's intimidating and he's intense and he's able to rally that, that savage, that warrior. The other game that I really enjoy, that I notice the nuances of my mindset, is squash. So my dad used to play a lot of squash in PNG. It was a very colonial sport. In the colonies, we played a lot of squash.
Yep.
When the natives were restless, we would go off and play golf and squash. And so I've played a bit, and I notice the micro moments when I allow my thought to go outside the court. So if my mind drifts to what's going on in my day or my relationship or anything outside the court, I would almost guarantee to lose the next point.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was entirely focused on the court in the micro moments, more likely to succeed. And what a phenomenal proving ground, sport is for the inner landscape of the mind.
Yeah.
And, I had this really awesome moment in a medicine journey, at the Grail. And I think I've shared this with you. And it really showed me the contrast of what the work has done for the inside of my mind. And I remember sitting opposite Cal, opposite the fire, and everyone's in the journey, and I'm holding the space, and the inner texture and the inner landscape of my mind was a really nice place. I really liked what was in there. It was a beautiful, noble, clean, integral environment. It was somewhere I really enjoyed being.
Yeah.
And it's probably the first time in a medicine journey that I've had zero level of adverse introspection, where there was something out of alignment, something out of integrity, something that I had to look at. And I'm sure there'll be experiences in the future. I'm sure I'll get my ass handed to me again in the future, as I should, for whatever it is that I need to look at. But yeah, it was a really nice experience to have that inside of my mind. Is a nice place.
Yeah, for sure. And when we can create that, life gets better on the other side. In the early arenas of my yoga journey, Dunks dropped this quote on me, and that was that the external world is a complete and utter reflection of your internal world. And I was like, what do you mean, mate? Like, that's a shit situation. Surely everyone hates that situation. I was completely oblivious to the fact that, you know, maybe I'm the only person that has a distaste or an aversion to certain things.
If my boss is a cunt, he's just a cunt. It's got nothing to do with me.
Got nothing to do with me. I'm fine over here.
My girlfriend's a narcissist. My boss is an asshole. My neighbor's a dick. All of that. All of it. All sits outside of me for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing we like to do as people is we like to segment things.
Yeah.
You know, okay, that's happening over there and I like that, and that's happening over there and I don't like that. And we don't understand how all aspects of life are infiltrating all of the other aspects at the same time. You know, like a shitty experience at work is probably or can be responsible for you having a shitty fucking relationship with your spouse, because you drag the stuff home. You tell yourself, oh yeah, I leave all that in the office, but there's underlying currents that are affecting all of the ways that we're interacting with people all the time.
Yeah. What's the common denominator? Hey.
Yeah. Like I said in my testimonial video, you know, before I found you, bro, I'd been with a different coaching organization that year one cost me $42,000. Year two cost me $38,000. I then signed up with another mob after that, which was, you know, okay, that was $12,000 for the year, right? And I said in my testimonial video, I spent lots of time trying to fix my business and none of it's worked. So what's at the center of it? Well, me. And so I best just turn the spotlight back onto self and let's do some more self-discovery here. You know, the word, I don't like the word. We use it all the time, doing the work, you know, and you could say that the work's never done, is the common saying that we have. But, yeah, I think there needs to be a bit of a reframe on that. It's more about the caring of myself, and the understanding of myself is never done.
I like the word, the work. And for those who are maybe uninitiated to that expression, it's a common phrase used by people in the world of personal development and self-improvement to refer to the bigger body of self-awareness and self-improvement, what people would colloquially call the work, doing the work on yourself. I like it because what it does for me is it has me return to like the simple steps of humble action that improving myself and my life and the lot of others actually is. And Cal and I spoke about this last time on the podcast. I said that at the core of every spiritual tradition and every philosophy or wisdom tradition around improving self, you've got some pretty similar core tenements, which is something to the effect of chop wood, carry water, do the simple things and do them often. And I think I certainly have a tendency to, my shadow is like elevate, you know, either myself or elevate people who have achieved a great state of success in personal development and evolution. And I think it's important for me to stay humble. And when I refer to doing the work, it keeps me on the ground and keeps me doing the work in at the humblest possible level. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I hear you on that. I suppose there's there can be a specific relationship with the word work. You know, when we think about work, well, I have a job, so I go to work, and for the majority out there, people hate their fucking job, so therefore they hate work, right?
But what you're saying, Carl, is that you have that association with the word, the work.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, look, I don't say I go to work anymore, but bro, because I'm living in line with my purpose. I get to go and give people an experience of yoga and help them transform their lives. That's like, I'm fucking blessed to be able to do that. I don't classify what I do as work anymore. Even when I'm sitting here in my office and I'm, you know, building bits around my business, I'm blessed and I'm grateful to get to be able to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a magic formula, you know, and it's one of the things I think that was interesting when you and I met. You were already living a life of purpose. You were already helping people become better through yoga.
Yep.
And so purpose was already something you had. But as you discovered through our framework, purpose was only one piece.
Absolutely. Yep.
What did that piece of pack, as we call it, you know, community, what did it actually do for you, and how did it change, you know, your trajectory?
Bro, I think, you know, being around good men and having brothers and having them support me and, you know, with that coaching and mentor aspect, sometimes it's a bit of nurture and sometimes it's a bit of a firecracker. It reminded me that I need to have variance in the way that I hold my inner conversation with myself. You know, if I'm here shitting on myself because I didn't meet my own expectations, but two of my brothers are standing here going, bro, this is actually really fucking awesome. It gives me that relief moment where I go, oh fuck, I'm doing that thing again where I'm too harsh with myself. And then there's other aspects where, you know, I got Daz Herford standing over me, counting push-ups, and I realized that, okay, I've been soft on myself in some other areas where I shouldn't have. It's and also, bro, also the ability, and I'm massive on this, and I'd lost the ability to do this. We're all addicts. We're addicted to our thoughts. That's what we're addicted to, and that's what we can't get away from, and that's where we lack discipline. And we can send ourselves into a spiral with continual rumination over the negative aspects. And when we have a brotherhood that we can hold, that we can speak our thoughts out loud to, whether they have something to say about it or not is irrelevant. Spoken word comes back through our ears differently than the continual rolling and rumination of thoughts. So there's a mirror that the brothers can provide, even if they don't have anything to say. In fact, especially when they don't have anything to say. When I drop some words on one of my brothers and they give me a look, I know immediately, I know what that look means, and I know where I need to go. We'll still do a further debrief on it, but, you know, space amongst brothers is a powerful thing too, because we can use it to decipher and clean up what's happening in here.
Yeah. There's, I think, a really powerful feature of honest, integral men who can provide feedback that's as free as possible of their projections. And we can never be free of projection, right? Perspective is projection. Everything I see is by the lens of how I see the world.
Yes.
But when we stand among men who can provide that honest and integral feedback, it provides a mirror. We can't see behind our own head. In Korean culture, they have this expression that even a monk can't shave his own head, which is cool. And it's this idea that even at the level of enlightenment and advancement that a monk would be at, that they need somebody outside themselves to show them the blind spots.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, like, your journey into our tribe has been a real watershed, because, you know, your level of contribution, our level of friendship, and our brotherhood, and what we do in, you know, in service to the men in our community, blurs all the lines and breaks all the rules about what a client and a or a mentor and mentee, or, you know, person who's receiving and providing. You know, when you look at the traditional model of boundaries between client and recipient, or client and provider, we're not supposed to have the kind of relationship that we are.
No,
We're
probably not.
supposed to have, you know, the phone calls just, hey, cunt, what are you doing? Fuck off. What are you talking about? You know, we're not supposed to have these things. We're supposed to have boundaries, right? They're supposed to. And early in my career and early in Primal, I was told, you know, you need to have boundaries in your time. You need to have boundaries of your role. You'll lose your credibility. You'll lose this sense of authority that's important as a teacher, facilitator. And I was like, it never resonated for me. It never felt true. And I'm interested to explore this with you, because I think we do a really good job of being in service to each other's world, being brothers in a community, being a recipient of a service that I provide, being a receiver from you of your expertise and your efforts, and then I guess just fucking blending it all in a blender and then drinking it as a fucking juicy, you know, way of being in service to each other in the world.
Yeah. Interesting, the advice that you received around, you know, being facilitator. I received the same advice as an emerging yoga teacher, and I listened to the advice. And I think I listened to the advice because I had these visions of me creating this yoga studio and it blowing up and me earning all of these millions of dollars a year, and then people wanting to, you know, latch on and suck that from me, or create, or I've created this environment. Right, I've created the environment of unfairness, and I didn't want to. Yeah, I just didn't want to. I thought that people might leech my time and things like that, and it was all a garbage story that I've now shifted. But after being a part of the Primal community, I've made many headroads into shifting that, which has been great. You know, look, here's the thing, right, that I see with us, particularly when it comes to this working relationship that we have, you and I. I've got these areas. I've got areas of expertise. You've got areas of expertise. Everybody does. Some of the areas that you struggle with are a walk in the park for me. Like, you know, the building of an automation or the building of a website, which goes to stand to the fact that I spent 15 years in the IT space, you know, and after the things that I've received of being through the program, I couldn't fathom, you know, doing a minimum 1 hour charge out for something that's going to take me literally 9.5 minutes to have something that's just slick and smooth and done. Like, you know, and I look forwards to ways of being in service. As a yoga teacher, I took a vow that I am now a man of service to the rest of the world. That's what I do as a teacher. I'm a man of service in helping people. And the, the reward is for me is the gratitude in my self abilities and to see Primal thrive. Like, every man who's been through the spear has the same catchphrase around the spear, and that is that every man needs this. Like when I got to the end of the first 4 days of teacher training and realized I had some of the tools to help other people bring themselves out of a mundane, shitty existence. When I came out of the other side of the spear and was just lit up with all of this vibrancy for life, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure that Primal continues to grow and affects more lives because of the experience. The experience of me stabilizing my relationship with myself again. That's the reward. That's the reward, man.
Yeah.
And I realized that it comes through connection. It comes through open, honest communication. I know you don't like the word vulnerable, but there's that sense around, us just being real with each other and seeing the rewards on the other side of that,
And I think there's something that's really magical about being in a community with a shared mission and a shared purpose to be in positive contribution to men's lives. That we as men, when we face each other to communicate, I think there's something that happens to us where we feel that instinct of potential confrontation. And so there's a lot of skill and deconditioning necessary for us to communicate in that way, I think, and for it to be the norm and for it to be received well. Whereas when we face in the same direction and we're moving towards a shared goal and we're doing something where both of our efforts are in service to something greater, I think men are designed to experience that as the way that we bond. Because if we were going to be hunting the mammoth together, we're not standing there looking at each other in the eyes. We're looking at the mammoth together. We're standing shoulder to shoulder. And there is this really enriching experience of being shoulder to shoulder, with you in service to men in your role as, crew and chief of staff of our retreat on the spear, to see you deploy your skills, your zones of genius in your physical facilitation on the event, in your technical and business skills behind the scenes. And then for us to then have this fusion of we're in full contribution to each other's lives. Yeah. In our area of best effort, I'm going to give everything I've got to you to have you thrive. Yeah. There's an amplification effect that it is fucking magic. It really is magic. And I wish men understood more what was available in connection and in collaboration towards a common goal of something that's of service. There is a magic in there that very few men have access to and very few men experience in their lives.
Yeah. There's another environment where I experienced that, right? When I'm ripping down the freeway on my motorbike and I got one of my brothers just a meter over to the side of me and we're both blasting down that freeway, cutting into the wind, knocking it down there at 130, 140, 150 or whatever it is. And there's this sense of me being larger by him being by my side and us moving together in that direction. It's a men moving in the same direction together is a powerful force.
I could not have said it better. We were designed to hunt in packs. So if you're a man and you don't have a pack and you're not hunting something together, then there's something that you're missing out on.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about going out together with a group of men to get drunk and hit on women in the, in the city.
Wrong
I'm not
environment.
talking about going down to the pub or going for a car display exhibition. Fucking let's go and work on our cars. Although that's great. Look, no disparagement to anybody who wants to do that. I'm talking about finding something worthy of your efforts that's in contribution to others. Something that is going to leave the world a better place, not just something that you're doing with your time. And, what I've learned, and I think this is part of the magic that we brought you into, is that our happy chemicals are in most abundance when we're being in service to others alongside people we care about.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel that it starts with the establishment of a trust relationship and the ability to recognize the qualities, unique qualities that each man holds, and then support where need be with our own individual qualities, and then have guidance from another man based on the qualities that we see in that other man, as opposed to the typical masculine relationship in Australia is hanging shit on each other for all of our pitfalls.
Yeah. It is a really strange and potentially a bit unfortunate part of Australian culture that the masculine to masculine relationship is based on denigration. It's based on diminishing. It's based on dismissing, deflecting. If you get acknowledged by another man, you're supposed to deflect it. If you see another man doing a good thing, you're supposed to diminish it.
Yeah.
If you have a moment of sentimentality or authenticity, you're supposed to diffuse it with humor, take the piss. And there's something really missing for men that they would have access to if men could see past those tenets of Australian culture, recognize the great parts about it. Like I fucking love being Australian. Honest to God, if I could choose any country in the world to live in, we are truly the lucky country. I love Australia. I love this country. I love our culture, but it doesn't mean that everything about it is ideal.
Of course. Yeah. Everything has its pros and cons, right?
Yep.
And just, something's coming up for me there as you're talking. I recognize that a lot of my time pre-yoga, a lot of my time in the gym, if there was that odd chance where a bro gave me a compliment, intellectually, I'd take it on board, but I actually never really believed what they were saying. It's fucking very weird that we can intellectually go, oh, yeah, cool, but the feeling on the other side of that's the opposite.
Nice, man. Well, we're heading toward down the tail end of the time. I'd love to hear, what is, I suppose, something that you'd like to finish on, something that you'd like to convey to anybody who's listening that might be of interest to you, something that's alive for you in the moment.
What my journey has showed me through training, through fitness, through yoga, and through, arrival into Primal and all the work that we've done is that life doesn't have to be hard. And if life is hard, it is because we're making that story up in our head. We're so attached to stories. When I see this in the world, or when this happens, it means this. And yoga is something that really softened my mind in that area, because it started to show me that I can actually change the things that I like and the things that I don't like. And importantly, some of the things that I used to like were very much not good for me. And the things that I didn't like, they weren't for me and needed to be implemented. And, you know, I think that the exploration of one's body through modalities is very much one of the initial keys. It's one of the initial things that we do to men on the spear, bring them into their body. Because the body itself it needs to anchor the overactive energy of the brain. The single organ in your body that uses the most energy is the brain, and it's in thought. This is why we can sit at our desk and be working away all day and feel buggered, as opposed to someone who's just come from a 5 or 10K run and exerted all this massive physical energy, feels revitalized and refreshed. It's the body is our ability to get some space. And by getting said space away from here, we can come back and look at preconceived problems from with different eyes. Now, Einstein's famous for saying, problem cannot be resolved by the same mind that created it. That doesn't mean a different person has to answer the problem. It means we need to move ourselves through an experience that takes us away from that for long enough to create the space, refresh our hormone production, and come back. And now we are in a different mind. Yeah. So, when life's looking hard, if we can step back and we can drive ourselves towards something that's going to be physically hard, it can initiate all the change. I
love it. If somebody wants to connect with you, bro, and find out more about the work you're doing, I'd love you to speak before we wrap up a little bit about your teacher training. I know this is something that you're focused on at the moment.
Yeah, that is my current project, and I've been kicking goals in that space. So in alignment with the purpose and the mission of One Big Heart, it was crucial that I implemented a teacher training program in the studio. The mission of One Big Heart is to populate Greater Southwest Sydney with more and more and more yoga studios, and hopefully at some point in time break that into a national space. And so the support of the mission has been the creation and the delivery of our teacher training program. We offer a International Yoga Alliance recognized 200-hour certification. It's delivered across 13 weeks. It looks like 40 hours of online content, which is awesome because that content library stays open for 12 months once you are certified, and you can go back and have that continual reminder of all of the things that you've learned anatomically and philosophically as you start to get out there in the world and deliver. And there's 160 hours in person in which, I am creating really fucking awesome teachers that are ready to deliver transformational class from the moment they got the certificate in their hands. Our first round was a massive success. Certified 10 people. 3 of them need to come back and just do some more face-to-face hours because they had some stuff happen, which meant that they couldn't make one of those 4-day intensive weekends. But that's fine. Like, the program does run twice a year, and so taking sign-ups right now. We're actually got a good buy-in thus far on our second round, which is going to come out in September. But I love being in that space. It's one thing to stand in front of a room and deliver a profound yoga class and have 30 people at the end of that, just with they look different in their face. Maybe one or two people come up to you and share a bit about how that's changed. But to be in the space of teaching teachers, that really lights me up. I've thrived in that environment ever since opening the studio. From the moment of opening the studio, I needed to be a mentor and a coach for the teachers who I was bringing on board to deliver the classes. So I've been in that experience for a long time. We've delivered teacher training under other models, licensed off other organizations for a period of time too, and it just feels so amazing to now have this completeness around the one big heart model itself, and to be recognized by International Yoga Alliance is massive. For people who are coming into the training, for them to put their hand up and say, yeah, I got certified by Australia's National Studio of the Year, and I now have an international certificate that I can walk into any studio across the world and drop some classes. There's lots of benefits to be had on all sides. And
is yoga teacher training just for people who want to become yoga teachers?
Absolutely not, bro. In fact, probably 75% of people who do yoga teacher training, they're not doing it so that they can stand in front of a room and deliver classes. The life-changing effects that happen through a training are profound because of the deep dive that we take into anatomy and physiology and biomechanics. So immediately your personal physical practice will expand probably the level of a 3 years on the mat in a 3-month space, right? So if you're just after physical improvement, like hands down, bang, that's happening. But yoga is a psychology before it's a movement practice. And the philosophy of yoga gives us really simple tools to understand our mind, understand our emotions, and to create changes in the patterns that are there. And I have people who say to me, if I had been through this training 20, 30, 50 years ago, I have a 72-year-old who just did our training. And her response was, if I had known this 50 years ago, my life would look completely different.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's what it did for me. I'd already noticed massive changes in the 2 years of my journey as a practitioner before I went to do my training. But, that moment where I realized the tools that I now have to understand myself and understand my mind, was a blessing, an absolute blessing. Yeah.
Not just how to do a handstand, but how not to be an asshole.
That's it, brother. Yep. That's really it. Yeah.
I love the medicine of an honest teacher delivering the feedback that's needed at the moment that's needed. I've had some fucking pearlers from my mentor over the years. So, thank you, man. Appreciate you sharing about the yoga teacher training. Just as a bit of advocacy for your work, I've received in parts, opportunities to practice and receive your facilitation of yoga, and it was the most grounded and the most intuitive and authentic delivery I've ever experienced from a yoga teacher. And what I really valued in it was the masculine, grounded direction and leadership and instruction that is also connected, present, empathetic, and in an energy of that love and care and compassion for those who are practicing. And as a man, as a red-blooded man, I love your teaching style. And so if anyone's considering learning from you in how to either deepen in their practice of yoga or to teach the practice of yoga, I don't think there would be somebody else that I would say they'd be in better hands with. So We're going to put some links in the show notes to have a look at your studio, your yoga teachers training course that's coming up. Tell us when's the kickoff of the next round?
Kickoff is the 6th of September. So plenty of time, 2 months.
Yeah.
If you're watching this now. Yeah.
And if anyone is curious about what we've spoken about with the Spear, our 3-day rite of passage for men, Karl is one of our facilitators and leaders on the Spear. He's there as a man standing side by side with me, creating those incredible experiences for men. If you are interested to hear more about that, we'll drop in a link in the show notes as well. 14th to the 17th of August up in the Northern Rivers, Northern New South Wales. So, bro, fuck yeah. That was first one in the bag. Thank you, my man. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you do for me, for my tribe, for our tribe, for the health and well-being of people, for the hearts and minds of men. Thank you for being a man who is leaving the world better than how he found it. You mean the world to me, bro. I love you. I love what we've created together. I love what we're doing in service to the world together. And yeah, I just look forward to continuing to do great things alongside you, my man.
Thank you, brother. I feel honored and I feel blessed that our paths crossed and we get to fucking do this shit together, bro. Fuck yeah. Fuck yes to life from here.
Fuck yes. Nope. All right, my beautiful people. If you've watched right to the end, thank you. I really do appreciate you being a part of the conversation. Hope what we've shared and spoken about has created some awareness for you, that has had you asking some questions of yourself. If you know a man who could benefit from this conversation, man or woman, if you know a man who could benefit from having the kind of relationship with men that Karl and I have in service to and in support of each other, if you know someone that you think would benefit from what we do or what we're talking about, please share this episode with us, with him, and follow the details around the page to find out more about what we do. Otherwise, big love. See you next time.
Peace out, brother.
Yeah.